In 1936, the best-selling truck in its class in America was not a Ford. It was not a Chevy. It was built by a shoemaker's son in Chicago, and it was gorgeous. They called it the Cadillac of trucks. Then America killed it. This is the story of Diamond T. To understand how Diamond T happened, you have to understand the man who built it. Charles Arthur Tilt grew up watching his father make shoes in Chicago. The elder Tilt was a craftsman who supplied Marshall Field and Company, one of the biggest department stores in the country. He stamped every sole with a logo he designed himself, a large letter T framed inside a diamond. The diamond meant quality, the T meant tilt, simple, effective. And the younger Tilt never forgot it. In 1905, C.A. Tilt built his first automobile, not a truck, a touring car with a four-cylinder engine pushing around 70 horsepower. For the time, that was serious machinery. He put his father's logo on the hood and started selling them. Production began in 1907 with 3 body styles. 50 cars built that first year. Substantial machines, well-made, fairly expensive, the kind of automobile a successful businessman would drive. But Tilt was restless. He kept watching the commercial vehicle market grow while his luxury car operation stayed small. Then, in 1911, everything changed. A customer from Michigan, a plumber who had bought a Diamond T car and loved it, walked into the factory and asked Tilt to build him a truck. A 1.5-ton hauler with solid tires and chain drive, powered by a Continental 4-cylinder engine with a Brown-Lipe transmission and Timken axles in a Smith frame. Tilt agreed, built it, delivered it, and somewhere between the handshake and the invoice, he had an epiphany. There was more money in trucks than cars, a lot more money. He stopped making passenger vehicles immediately, never looked back, never regretted it. From that moment on, Diamond T built trucks, only trucks. But Tilt brought something to the truck business that nobody else had thought to bring: taste. Now, to appreciate what Tilt did next, you need to understand what the American truck market looked like in 1912. It was chaos. Dozens of small manufacturers scattered across the Midwest building basic haulers for local customers. No standards, no styling, no brand loyalty. A truck was a truck was a truck. The big names we know today, Ford and Chevrolet, had not yet entered the truck market in any serious way. International Harvester was making farm equipment that occasionally carried things. Mack was building buses and heavy haulers in New York. The industry was wide open, and nobody had figured out how to make a truck that anyone was proud to own. Here was the problem with American trucks in the early 1900s. They were ugly. Functional, sure. Reliable sometimes. But they looked like industrial equipment because that is exactly what they were. Flat panels, exposed hardware, no paint worth mentioning. Nobody cared how a truck looked because trucks were tools, not vehicles you wanted to be seen driving. The idea of styling a truck was about as common as styling a wheelbarrow. Nobody bothered. C.A. Tilt disagreed. He reportedly said it more than once, and it became the founding philosophy of the entire company. A truck does not have to be homely. 5 words. That was the whole idea, and it changed everything Diamond T ever made. When World War I broke out, Diamond T had already established dealerships across the country. Truck sales had been booming since 1911, and the government took notice. The U.S. military contracted Diamond T as one of 15 manufacturers to build the Class B Liberty truck, a standardized military hauler designed by the Quartermaster Corps and the Society of Automotive Engineers. Diamond T produced more than 1,500 of them on a brand new production line. The Liberty truck ran a collaborative 4-cylinder engine of 424 cubic inches, making 52 horsepower, topping out at about 15 miles per hour. Not glamorous, but it proved Diamond T could build in volume, under pressure, to government specifications. And it earned them credibility with the military that would pay off enormously 23 years later. Through the 1920s, Tilt kept pushing. Diamond T trucks acquired rubber-mounted enclosed cabs with real doors. Electric lights replaced kerosene. Pneumatic tires replaced solid rubber. 6-cylinder engines from Hercules replaced the old 4s. And in 1928, Tilt made a move that stunned the industry. He adopted streamlined designs with raked windshields and V-shaped grills. Power output jumped with new 60-horsepower Hercules 6s. And the advertising slogan changed from the nation's freight car to something no truck manufacturer had ever dared to claim: the handsomest truck in America. Nobody had ever marketed a truck on looks. Tilt did, and it worked. In 1929, Diamond T sold 3,590 trucks. Then the Depression hit. Companies collapsed left and right. But Diamond T survived because Tilt had done something smart. He had positioned his trucks just different enough, just premium enough, that his buyers were not the same people who bought the cheapest option on the lot. In 1932, at the bottom of the Depression, Diamond T still sold 2,250 units. By 1935, they sold 6,454. And by 1936, they reached their all-time peak, 8,750 trucks, best year the company ever had. But Tilt was not satisfied with just building handsome trucks. He wanted to build the future. In 1933, he partnered with Norman Bell Geddes, one of the most famous industrial designers in America, and the Heil Company of Alabama, to build a fuel tanker for Texaco. The result was called the Doodlebug, a fully streamlined delivery truck with a rear-mounted engine, compound curved glass windshield, inboard wheels, and no visible fenders, hood, cowl, or running boards. The entire body was one continuous aerodynamic shape, like a flattened pill on wheels. It stood just 72 inches tall, 4 inches more than a 1934 Ford sedan, a 1,500-gallon fuel tanker that was shorter than a family car. The compound curved windshield on the Doodlebug would not appear in mass production on any vehicle for another 24 years, when Chrysler finally used it on the 1957 Imperial. The through-body sides would not see production until the 1946 Kaiser. Diamond T built it all in 1933. A prototype was completed first and debuted at the Chicago World's Fair. Then a production run of 6 more for Texaco's fleet, all painted in Texaco red, used in regular service delivering fuel products. None of the 7 survive today. All are believed to have been destroyed. Meanwhile, Diamond T's regular trucks kept setting standards. The 1933 models introduced a new all-steel covered cab with doors and roll-up windows. A 1935 style change added a streamlined V-shaped windshield. There is a report from the BC Vintage Truck Museum that Diamond T bought leftover 1934 Packard dash panels and gauges for their 35 trucks, Packard components, in a working truck. The trucks also came standard with electric clocks and cigar lighters, features that luxury car buyers expected and truck buyers had never dreamed of seeing. In 1937 came the first all-steel cab in the light truck class. No wood framing anywhere, pure metal. A year later, something even bolder, a 100,000-mile warranty in 1938. When most trucks were lucky to survive 50,000 without a major overhaul, the Model 201 pickup, also introduced in '38, became the definitive Diamond T, a 1-ton hauler on a heavy-duty cruciform-braced ladder frame, rigid I-beam front axle, full floating rear axle, Lockheed hydraulic brakes, cast-iron spoke wheels, 16 inches standard with 20-inch optional. Diamond T's own literature bragged about it. The Model 201 is a unique vehicle in the light-duty field. Its all-truck specifications and exceptionally rugged construction set it widely apart because most trucks in this classification are commonly passenger car adaptations, the The 201 shared nothing with any automobile. The rear springs alone tell you what this was. 13 steel leaves per side, stacked like a dump truck suspension. The chassis weighed 2,750 pounds empty, and the gross vehicle weight rating was 8,000 pounds. Power came from a 73 horsepower Hercules L-head, 6-cylinder code QXB3, with 7 main bearings. 7. Most engines of the era had 3 or 4. That crankshaft was cast from the strongest steel Hercules could forge, and those 7 bearings meant the engine would essentially run forever if you kept oil in it. Post-war models got a stronger 91 horsepower Hercules, displacing 236 cubic inches. A 3-speed Warner transmission was standard, but almost nobody ordered it. The optional T9 4-speed with a granny low first gear was far more popular because drivers wanted that extra crawl ratio for heavy loads. But here is what made the 201 special beyond the engineering. Everyone left the factory in red, fire engine red, with green accent striping on the cab, chrome hubcaps on the deluxe models, stainless steel framing around the split V-shaped windshield, each side cranking open for ventilation. Inside, pre-war deluxe models featured an engine-turned dash panel that gleamed like fine jewelry. The truck listed around $1,400 when a Ford half-ton was $1,232. The Diamond T was simply called the boss's truck, because the guy driving one was never the hired hand. Only about 7,000 were built between 1938 and 49. Ford made that many trucks in a slow week. Some historians believe Diamond T actually lost money on every pickup they sold, treating them as prestige products that burnished the brand for their bigger commercial lines. Then the war came, and Diamond T answered. By 1942, civilian production stopped. The factory on West 26th Street in Chicago's Cicero area converted entirely to war production. Diamond T ranked 47th among all United States corporations in total World War II military contract value, not 47th among truck makers, all corporations, period. Nearly 50,000 military vehicles rolled out of that Chicago factory. The Model 968 became the U.S. Army's standard 4-ton 6x6 tactical truck, designed primarily to tow the 155mm howitzer and carry its crew and ammunition. 529 cubic inch Hercules RXC, inline 6. 106 horsepower, 5-speed manual with a 2-speed transfer case, front-mounted 15,000-pound Garwood winch with 300 feet of cable, over 18,000 pounds empty. Every fourth truck equipped with a ring mount for a .50 caliber machine gun. Over 30,000 chassis built. The 969 Wrecker variant carried a Holmes W45 heavy-duty bed with twin booms and dual 5-ton winches. It became the Army's standard medium recovery vehicle and served in every theater of the war. Diamond T also built the entire G509 series, including cargo, dump, semi-tractor, and wrecker variants, plus lighter trucks and even half-tracks. But Diamond T's masterpiece was the Model 980 tank transporter. In 1940, the British Purchasing Commission arrived in America with a problem. German armor was getting bigger. The British needed a vehicle that could haul a damaged 40-ton Churchill tank off a North African battlefield, often under direct fire, across desert sand, to a repair depot. They approached several American manufacturers. Diamond T had recently prototyped a heavy prime mover for the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps that, with minor modifications, met every British requirement. An initial order for 200 was placed and filled quickly. Quick note: if you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. We cover stuff like this every week. Okay, back to it. The 980 was a 12-ton 6x4 ballast tractor. Early versions used a Hercules DFXE diesel engine, 855 cubic inches, nearly 15 liters. naturally aspirated inline six-cylinder diesel, producing 201 brake horsepower at 1,600 RPM and 685 pound-feet of torque at 1150 revolutions per minute. That is an engine the size of a washing machine, turning at the speed of a ceiling fan. Pure low-end grunt. Later versions got the Hall-Scott 440 gasoline engine, 1,090 cubic inches, nearly 18 liters, 240 horsepower. The single largest gasoline engine fitted in any military truck during the entire Second World War. Nothing else came close. The drivetrain was designed for one purpose: moving impossible weight at very low speed across terrible terrain. A Fuller 4-speed main gearbox with a 3-speed auxiliary behind it. The main box had a special low first gear, plus 3 road gears, 4th being direct. The auxiliary offered low, direct, and overdrive. That gave the driver 12 forward speeds and 3 reverse. The low combinations were absurdly slow, crawling at walking pace under maximum load while the engine barely worked. A single dry plate clutch fed Timken double reduction differentials on the rear tandem axles. Paired with the M9 Rogers trailer, the combination became the M19 tank transporter. The trailer rode on tandem rear axles with a single front axle on a rotating dolly and ramps that hinged down at the rear. The 980 carried a short ballast body behind the cab loaded with up to 18,000 pounds of dead weight to keep those rear axles planted under heavy towing. A 20-ton winch sat mid-mounted with 300 feet of steel cable. The 981 variant, introduced late '42, routed cable through the front bumper and carried 500 feet, enabling forward self-recovery alongside rear loading. Rated to pull 115,000 pounds. Some sources say 120,000. Either number is absurd. The first batch arrived in Britain in 1942 and went straight to North Africa with the 8th Army. Royal Army Service Corps crews ran them in the Western Desert, recovering damaged Shermans and Grants under fire, in sand, in heat that would cook a lesser machine. The Diamond T never quit. 5,871 were built by war's end. Every Allied army in every theater used them. The British took about 1,000. The Soviets received them through Lend-Lease via Persia. After the war, 20 nations operated them. The British kept theirs until the Thornycroft Antar replaced them in the early 50s. A few remained in British service until 1971, 3 decades of continuous duty from a truck designed in 1940. Interestingly, the U.S. Army had a complicated relationship with the 980. They respected it, but preferred the M26 Dragon Wagon built by Pacific Car and Foundry. As late as April '44, U.S. Army Ground Forces ordered that no Diamond T transporters be shipped to any theater except where specifically requested. When the M26 took over the primary tank hauling role, the 980s were reassigned to ammunition hauling, where the Army described their performance as tremendous. The war made Diamond T famous. It also planted the seeds of its destruction. Here is the cruel irony. Diamond T entered World War II as a respected independent truck builder. They left it as a company that had proven beyond any doubt that they could build some of the toughest vehicles on the planet. Their war record was flawless. Their reputation had never been higher, and none of that mattered. Because the post-war trucking market had fundamentally changed while Diamond T was busy winning the war. Peace brought Diamond T back to civilian production. By 1946, the first full year of commercial output, they had 5 models. By 47, 14. By 49, 19 models available. Conventional cabs, sleeper cabs, cab-over-engine designs, school bus chassis, specialty vehicles. Chassis rated from 8,000 to 36,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. Engines from Hercules, Cummins, Continental, Detroit Diesel, and Caterpillar. Transmissions from Fuller, Borg-Warner, Spicer, Clark, and New Process. single and tandem rear axles in a bewildering range of wheelbases. Annual model changes were abandoned because the company simply could not afford them. Many models continued unchanged for years. Some critics later said 19 models was too many for a company Diamond T's size. They were right. It spread the engineering budget too thin and the factory floor too wide. The real problem was what had happened to the competition. Ford, Chevrolet, GMC, and International Harvester came out of the war with massive factory capacity, government-funded tooling, and the ability to produce trucks in volumes Diamond T could never approach. They undercut on price and flooded the market with adequate trucks that were cheaper to buy and far easier to service because their dealers were on every corner of every town in America. Diamond T had maybe 250 dealers nationwide. Ford had thousands. Diamond T's fatal flaw was the same one that kills every small, quality-focused manufacturer eventually. Their trucks were better built, they lasted longer, they rode better, they looked better, and they cost more. Fleet buyers, the people ordering 10 or 50 or 100 trucks at a time, did not care about Packard dashboards or Art Deco grillwork. They cared about purchase price per unit, maintenance cost per mile, and how far the nearest dealer was when something broke at 2 in the morning on a highway in Nebraska. Diamond T could not win that equation. The math was impossible. Diamond T dropped out of the pickup market entirely after 1949 because the economics were hopeless. A Diamond T 201 cost $200 more than a Ford F1, and most working buyers could not justify the premium no matter how much better the truck was. The same economic pressure wiped out every independent pickup maker in America during the late 40s and early 50s. Studebaker, Hudson, Crosley, all the independents fell one by one. It was a massacre in slow motion, driven by nothing more dramatic than unit cost and dealer network size. C.A. Tilt retired in '47, handing Diamond T to his brother Ned. The founders spent over 4 decades building something the industry had never seen. In 1954, C.A. Tilt died of a sudden heart attack. Almost immediately, White Motor Corporation of Cleveland started circling. They had already bought Sterling in '51, Autocar in '53, and Rio in '57. Diamond T resisted, but by the mid-'50s, military contracts were all that kept the books balanced. The writing was on the wall. On March 28, 1958, the deed was done. White Motor Company bought Diamond T. The purchase price was never widely disclosed, but what White got was a well-respected brand with a loyal following and a dedicated dealer network. What Diamond T got was a slow-motion execution. The Chicago factory at 4509 West 26th Street stayed open for 2 more years. White kept the product line running, kept the Diamond T name on the trucks, and let the Lansing division handle both Diamond T and Rio production going forward. Then, in 1960, White shut down the Chicago plant entirely, moved everything to the Rio factory in Lansing, Michigan. The building where C.A. Tilt had built trucks for nearly half a century went dark. The workers who had assembled Diamond T trucks for decades either relocated or found other work. In Lansing, the Diamond T name continued, but something fundamental had changed. The trucks increasingly looked like White products. By the mid-'50s, Diamond T had already started sharing cabs with other manufacturers. Mack and International used the same cab design on their mid-decade models. Diamond T did the sheet metal work and final assembly, but the bones were no longer exclusively theirs. Under White's ownership, this trend accelerated. The styling became generic. The distinctive design identity that C.A. Tilt had spent 40 years cultivating was being erased, model by model, year by year. White was not preserving Diamond T. They were absorbing it. The corporate parent trimmed the model lineup to trucks it saw fit to continue making and marketing. The construction, refuse, and material distribution fields Short and long-distance hauling. Practical stuff. Profitable stuff. Nothing that needed to be the handsomest truck in America. White introduced models of similar appearance across its different divisional brands. If you squinted, a Diamond T looked like a White looked like an auto car. The whole point of buying Diamond T in the first place, the uniqueness, was gone. The last true Diamond T rolled off the Lansing line in late '66. In '67, White merged it with Rio to form Diamond Rio. The Diamond and the T were still in the name, but neither the Diamond nor the Tilt family had anything to do with it anymore. White sold Diamond Rio in '71. New owners, Loyal Osterland and Ray Housel of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, both former Class 8 truck dealers, kept a handful of models alive, most notably the Giant C-116. They tried. They produced the Royale Cabover and the Apollo Conventional, powered by Caterpillar, Cummins, or Detroit diesel engines, decent trucks. But the magic was long gone. Multiple ownership changes followed through the '70s and '80s. The doors finally closed for good in 1995, 90 years after C.A. Tilt built his first car. Over 56 years, approximately 250,000 Diamond T trucks were built. Ford does that in a few months. But those trucks earned a reputation that volume production cannot buy. Every Diamond T was an assembled truck. Engines from Hercules and Cummins, transmissions from Warner and Spicer, axles from Timken and Clark, cabs from McLaughlin Body. Diamond T sourced the finest components available, assembled them with extraordinary care, and wrapped it all in a design philosophy that made people feel something. Today, vintage Diamond T trucks are deeply loved by a small but fierce community. There is an online group called Diamond T Classics where owners trade parts, share photos, and keep the history alive. The Iowa 80 Trucking Museum in Walcott, Iowa has a gorgeous 57 921 with a Cummins 250 and Spicer 5-speed overdrive. Reunited with its original 1950 Trailmobile insulated trailer after the two were separated at auction years apart. The Estrella Warbird Museum in Paso Robles, California, has a military 968 that traveled from the U.S. Army to the Norwegian Army in the mid-90s, then to a Belgian collector, then to a British restorer who found it too big for English country lanes, and finally home to America in '99. Surviving examples pop up in the strangest places: raspberry fields in Wisconsin, barns in the Midwest, farm sheds where they have been sitting for 40 or 50 years, waiting. Restored 201 pickups command over $50,000 at auction, significantly more than a Ford or Chevy of the same era in similar condition. Rough, unrestored examples still sell for $15,000 to $20,000, simply because the name carries weight. In January 2026, a Diamond T Cabover pickup sold for $196,000 at auction. For a truck that listed at $1,400 new, the average selling price across all Diamond T models currently sits around $46,000. In 1998, a restored 36 Diamond T won Heavy Duty Trucking Magazine's oldest working truck contest, still hauling after more than 60 years. Parts are scarce, but not impossible. A former Diamond T dealer called Houseman Motor Company in Louisville, Kentucky, kept a basement full of new old stock Diamond T parts for decades after they switched to selling Chryslers. Enthusiasts used to make pilgrimages there to find headlight mounts, grille components, and hardware that simply did not exist anywhere else. Houseman is gone now too. The factory is gone. The company that bought it is gone. White Motor Corporation itself went bankrupt in 1980, drowned in debt from all those acquisitions. The address in Cicero is not a truck plant anymore. The engineers who designed these machines are gone. They took some secrets with them. The tooling was destroyed. But the trucks survive. In barns, in museums, in garages belonging to people who understand what CA Tilt knew from the start. A truck does not have to be homely. It never did. And the fact that the company which proved it could not survive in an industry that chose volume over craft, price over quality, and quarterly earnings over pride in the product, that tells you everything about how American manufacturing changed in the 20th century. Diamond T did not fail because it built bad trucks. It failed because it built the finest trucks in America, and not enough people were willing to pay for them. That might be the most American story there is. And there you have it, the rise and fall of Diamond T. If you have seen one in person, or your dad or grandfather drove one, tell me about it in the comments. And if you made it this far, subscribe. We do this every week.